1961, a group of men, whether you care to call them CFR members or trilateral commissioners after 73, it becomes a moot point. There's a group of men in the strategy room of the White House basement. They're CIA, Pentagon, Defense, and State Department personnel, and many of them are permanent bureaucrats. They never leave, regardless of the administration change. Those men are implementing a plan that's based on an ideology formulated over the past 30 years, and basically they won when the last man that ever tried to stop them was gotten rid of, and that was Kennedy. John Kennedy abolished the organization within the White House the first day of taking office. It was called the Operations Coordinating Board, and he was basically initiated into the strategy room, shown what the plan was, shown what was going on, the direction the country was going, and he said, "I don't think so." And he abolished the whole lock, stock, and barrel of them. Of course, they went immediately underground and just went into an informal group and called themselves the Special Group. They're still with us today.
To build a new world order. I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour.
I, Gerald R. Ford, President of the United States, pursuant to the pardon power conferred upon me by Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, have granted, and by these presents do grant, a full, free, and absolute pardon unto Richard Nixon for all offenses against the United States which he, Richard Nixon, has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from July 20, 1969 through August 9, 1974.
They are going to one day, if they can, create a world regime. They call it the global regime. It will be done by a strategy of interdependence, and if they can do it, they will be in charge of it. It is simply a matter of the status quo wanting to keep getting the billions of dollars of productivity in the West, but mostly in America and Canada. They want your money, period. These men are not capitalists in a free market sense. These men are global monopolists, and they are some of the most powerful men that have ever existed on the face of the earth. Come up. Interdependence between nations is considered, in the public's mind, a thing that has come about through trade and relationships and diplomacy, and it simply isn't true. The strategy of interdependence, and it is a strategy, was implemented around 1963, and there's a book published called The Strategy of Interdependence. It was put out by Vincent Rock, who was a Defense Department games analyst, and the strategy is to bring about such interdependence between America and the Soviet Union that there will be perceived in the people's minds no reason for discomfort between the two populaces. They're doing away with the enemy scenario.
A full-scale nuclear exchange lasting less than 60 minutes with the weapons now in existence could wipe out more than 300 million Americans, Europeans, and Russians, as well as untold millions elsewhere. That's why I support the Test Ban Treaty.
The point is, the Russian people and American people are very much alike. That may well be true. But the governments right now are becoming very much alike, and the American people are missing that point. The Soviets don't have any freedoms to give up. Only we can give up our freedoms, and we are giving them up now. The American people don't have any longer an ideology about their own country. So we're easily whipsawed by their ideology as they put it out through the major media.
Hemisphere is a family into which we were born, and we cannot turn our backs on it in time of trouble. Nor can we stand aside from its great adventure of development. I believe that all of the free members of the Organization of American States would be heartened and strengthened by any increase in your hemispheric role, your skills, your resources, your judicious perception at the council table, even when it differs from our own view, are all needed throughout the inter-American community. Your country and mine are partners in North American affairs. Can we not now become partners in inter-American? We should not misjudge the force of the challenge that we face. A force that is powerful as well as insidious. It inspires dedication as well as fear. That uses means we cannot adopt to achieve ends we cannot permit. Nor can we mistake the nature of the struggle. It is not for concessions or territory. It is not simply between different systems. It is an age-old battle for the survival of liberty itself.
They hire you, they put you on committees, they bring you in to participate, you get to go to Council on Foreign Relations luncheons and dinners, you get to sit next to the Chinese ambassador, you get to rub elbows with David Rockefeller. That's what they do first. Then you become so respectful in your own eyes of these men that they can pretty well get you to do what they want. Now, if that doesn't work, they give it maybe a year, maybe two of working on you that way to get you to basically sell out or adopt their ideology in some degree that's useful to them. If that doesn't work, they have a private luncheon with somebody you fear, and they tell you point blank, get in line or get out. The very same men put together an organization in Washington, D.C. some years ago called the Committee for Constitutional Systems Review. They're working very hard to so alter the U.S. Constitution to accept through the amendment procedures provided in the Constitution a new Constitution. Will not be the Constitution that we have learned to live with. In fact, I don't really believe that the Constitution exists in any tangible sense any longer as it stands today anyways. We're pretty much operating by the status quo's opinions of the way things ought to be. The Constitution doesn't come into play any longer.
Are you pertaining to a one-world government?
Well, they wish it would come about that easily as a viable government that would have the look and feel of a government, but I don't think it's ever going to reach that point because I don't believe they'll ever get the nationalities of the world to cooperate to that degree. The thing that has been called a one-world government for about 75 years in this country, talked about as far back as H.G. Wells and before his time, that thing itself already exists, and these men are already part of it. And they refer to documents that have not made much circulation to the public arena. They've been suppressed. They refer to it as acephalous organizations are used to control the implementation of the plan. ACEPH. Acephalous means what it is. It's a medieval term. You'll only find it in an older Webster's, larger Webster's. It's a term that describes medieval days, a priesthood that operated outside of the Pope's control, but with the Pope's knowledge. So the Pope could say, that's not what I had planned. But there are many, many groups below that that are sitting right next to our defense contractors. Well, for instance, the U.S.-USSR Trade and Economic Council is a little-known group. There's one of those councils for each Soviet bloc country. Our defense contractors sit down next to KGB generals each month and plan trade fairs where high technology is transferred through journals and seminars. They sit down every month. Another one will be the environmental pollution. In 1961, they called for, in one of their own study groups report, massive environmental pollution in the early 60s of scale that actually would cause a certain amount of loss of life. There had to be a certain amount of loss of life to make the pollution believable to the global population. Now, having polluted for the last 30 years, you see, now they can come back during the next decade and they can make war on the polluted environment. They also called for in the same report to help institute the environmental pollution and the solving of the pollution in the future, which is now here with us today. They called for a new mythological religion that would help bring about the environmental movement that would be tied to Mother Earth, one of the older religions, and that's exactly what the CIA said about doing in the early 60s, was creating that mythological religion that we all call today the New Age religion. It's been purged from Doubleday's computer because it was leaked to Dial Press and they published it. It was called the Report from Iron Mountain on the Desirability and Possibility of Peace. We were warned to watch out for this in government.